Science in pajamas. Hi. All right, so welcome back, you guys. We're gonna continue talking about ecology, and we're gonna be focusing on the two main classifications of organisms that are found within ecosystems. So the first one we're gonna talk about are the autotrophs. Now, the autotrophs, what this actually means is auto meaning self, kind of like an autobiography, and troph refers to feeding. So these are the self feeders. In other words, organisms that don't eat, they either make their own glucose by photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. But regardless, they actually make their own glucose within their cells. So they provide the glucose themselves. They take, in the case of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and oxygen, and they use it to make glucose. In chemosynthesis, which we tend to see in certain organisms that live around like deep sea hydrothermal vents, they'll take different sulfur compounds and use that in order to make the glucose. So autotrophs are organisms that make their own glucose. Now we tend to call these producers also, because they produce, see what we did there, their own food. So they make their own food either via photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. So in a lot of the ecosystems that we tend to talk about in class, especially the land-based ones, these organisms tend to be plants, trees, leaves, flowers, grasses, bushes, etc. Things of that nature. Now, after that, we have the heterotrophs. So we have heterotrophs. Now, hetero means other or different, and troph meaning feeding again. So heterotrophs are organisms that feed on other organisms. So they get their glucose not by making it in their cells, they actually getting it by eating other organisms or absorbing nutrients from the other organisms. But they don't make it themselves. Autotrophs produce their own glucose. Heterotroph consume it. That's why we also call them consumers. Because they have to consume other organisms in order to get glucose to power their cells. Now we can actually categorize different consumers based on what they eat. Now we're only going to talk about the main grouping of organism or of how they feed. There are some like subcategories as well, but we're only going to talk about the main ones. So the first main one is herbivores. And herbivores are consumers that eat only producers, so such as plants. So the herbivores are going to eat the plants. Examples of herbivores include cows, deer, elephants, rabbits, squirrels, things like that. Those are all herbivores because they only eat plants. next one is carnivores. And these are organisms that will eat other consumers. So they're consumers that eat other consumers. So in other words, they eat meat. But meat is kind of a weird terminology because when we typically talk about meat, we tend to mean just, muscles. But even organisms that eat insects can be considered carnivores because they do consume other consumers. Although sometimes we do put them in a separate category called insectivores. They're essentially a subcategory of carnivores where they eat insects instead of, muscle meat. But, so they feed on meat, they feed on animals, let's put it that way. That's a little bit easier to kind of put all the subcategories with. Some examples of carnivores include wolves, lions, hyenas, tigers, polar bears. So these are all animals that feed on other animals in order to survive. Sharks. Let's see. Something I was going to mention about that, but well, I'll mention that when we get to the next one. Next we have omnivores. And these are organisms that eat both plants and animals. This includes raccoons, many species of primates, humans are omnivores. Now, sometimes people think that dogs are omnivores because we see them eating grass or, like my dog, he enjoys certain fruits. But the thing is, when we talk about feeding, we're talking about not just the ability to eat something, to put in your mouth and swallow it, we're also talking about the ability to successfully digest it, break it down, and get energy from it. Dogs are carnivores. I mean, as an omnivore, I can eat plants and animals, and I can get energy from them. I can also eat a penny. Doesn't mean I'm going to get any energy from it. So it's more than just, putting something in your mouth and swallowing it. My dog likes certain fruits because he enjoys their flavor. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to provide him with an energy source. And sometimes dogs will eat grass to help settle their stomach. But again, they're not getting energy from it. It has this other completely separate effect rather than just feeding for energy. All right, we got two more, and these two are very similar. We have detritivores. And these eat dead remains. So they eat dead matter. A great example of this would be vultures or hyenas. Well, hyenas kind of fall between carnivores and detritivores. But we also tend to think of these as scavengers. Now I know I always get the question, but Miss Komar, don't lions eat dead things? Well, yeah, because they kill it and then they eat it. It's not a matter of just being dead. When we talk about dead matter, we're talking about decaying and in the process of decomposing. So roadkill that's on the side of a highway, that's been out there for a while, it's breaking down, it's decaying, and that's when the detritivores, the scavengers, will move in. Vultures don't usually hunt and attack and kill the prey themselves. They either wait for it to be too weak to fight back, or they wait for it to be already dead before they dig in. And why we, as humans, are not considered detritivores is because, yes, we get our meat dead, but it's been preserved either by freezing it or refrigerating it or it's wrapped up. We are not eating decaying meat. So that's kind of what the detritivores do. They will scavenge and eat the decaying dead matter on the sides of roads or in the middle of the forest, etc. Now, this is similar to our last one, which is decomposers. Now, these also feed on dead matter, but in a different way. What they do is they actually chemically break down organic matter and then absorb the nutrients directly into them. So both of these deal with dead things. They feed on dead, decaying organic matter. But the difference is detritivores eat it. They open up their mouths, they take a bite, they swallow it. Decomposers, on the other hand, they can sit and grow on it, and they will chemically break it down and then absorb it directly into their cells. And an example of this would be fungi. Different kinds of mold and mildew and mushrooms feed on organic matter. So those are what we mean by decomposers. Fungus does not have a mouth. What they do is when they attach, when the spores land on some dead matter and they start growing, they'll actually break down on a chemical level the organic matter that they're growing on, and then absorb the nutrients from it. No mouth, no eating, absorbing the nutrients, as opposed to detritivores, which eat it. So you can think of it as, if it ends in vores, they eat. Nom, 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 nom. But the decomposers, they break it down and absorb it. All right. I think that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of consumers versus producers, or heterotrophs versus autotrophs. All right, you guys, until next time, stay awesome, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.